Well, let's get underway. So welcome everyone to our weekly Escalate Mobile Learning Special Interest Group webinar. And this is probably going to be our last one for the year. And joining us today, a special guest from University of Melbourne, we have Alexis Pang. Alexis is from Veterinary and Agriculture Sciences and has done quite a bit of work around mobile field work. So I've read a little bit of Alexis's work. It's quite interesting. So I've invited Alexis to give us a bit of an overview, a bit of presentation of his projects, where he's at, perhaps where he's going to head in the future as well. So thank you, Alexis.
No worries. Thanks, Thomas. Yeah, can you hear me? Good? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, so screen froze for a while, sorry. Yeah, so just a quick intro. Yeah, I'm currently a lecturer in the School of Agriculture and Food. My PhD is in soil science, and I have been teaching for the past 7 years in a first-year subject called Natural Environments. Share a little bit more about it, but it's a first-year sort of broad subject that introduces students to elements of natural systems. And most of the students coming into this subject are basically agriculture students, but we used to get a lot more students from the architecture, building, planning, as well as engineering and some sciences as well, in terms of students wanting to go into environmental management, natural resources management. I also teach into soil science subjects at the second, third, and master's, third year undergraduate and master's level. So a bit of history. I used to be a high school geography teacher, senior high school geography teacher as well. So yeah, so a lot of what I've done sort of comes into play into the project. So revolving around, so in this aspect of geography related, physical geography related teaching. So now I'm gonna try and share my screen, which is this one, I hope. All right.
Yep, that's working.
Yeah, tick, tick, tick. Yeah, taking a while to tick through. Sorry about that.
It's all right. We're just getting the blue donut at the moment, but
yeah, I'm having that too. Oh, there it is. Do you see the slideshow now?
we can see the slides, but it's not in presentation mode. But
okay,
we can read the slides. Okay.
All right, I've switched over to the slideshow. I think that.
Oh, yep, that's good. That's good.
All right, good. So today I'm going to talk about FieldFriend, an app that we've been working on, me and my colleagues. And essentially, it's an app for mobile learning in the field. So, right. So just a bit of a context. I think I'm almost sort of preaching to the choir here, in the sense that when we try and teach many of the concepts related to natural systems, fieldwork is really quite central to the learning experience. So there's some background there in terms of how fieldwork really immerses students into the phenomena and the processes and aspects of the landscape that they're studying. And so that's really quite central. And I guess during this COVID time, the inability to do actual fieldwork, to bring or get students out to the field, has been, I feel, been quite an impediment to students' learning. But of course, we get around it. This is in the context of the subject of natural environments that I have sort of very quickly talked about. And in the past, natural environments was sort of part of a group of 3 core subjects for the Bachelor of Environments. So alongside with reshaping and urban environments. The issue, of course, with many first-year subjects or units is that you tend to have a very large student numbers. And so that, in essence, makes bringing students out on a field trip or an excursion really quite difficult. So at one point of time, natural environments, as well as the other two subjects here, were delivered to around 500 students each semester and repeated. So due to course restructuring and all that, it's reduced now to about 200 for the subject. So natural environments is the focus of the talk today. And just a quick look at the subject that I teach. I've been teaching for the past, I guess, 7 years already. So natural environments attempts to introduce students to essentially the 4 great realms of the Earth's natural systems: the lithosphere, the atmosphere, hydrosphere, and the biosphere. So how those large systems operate individually, I guess, but also how they interact across the different spheres and essentially intersect right at any one place to give you outcomes of vegetation and soils and so on, and ecology. All right, so there's a bit more information about the subject here, and sort of bringing it from the sort of broad global scale concepts and processes. We try and bring it down to a more local scale. And also we want students to develop the skills to be able to interpret natural landscapes and processes. So how all these different systems and processes express themselves in the landscape they can observe at the human scale. All right, but of course we get students to observe and discern aspects of the landscape from a broader scale as well. For example, using tools in Google Earth and so on. But essentially, these landscape interpretation skills are what we see as applicable to many different professions, natural, built, and of course managed environment as well. So applicable domains include agriculture, natural resource management, urban planning, landscape ecology, and the list goes on. And so, as I mentioned, all right, your traditional sort of field teaching approach, all right, is sort of precluded because you have such large student numbers, and the only way to get around this is to bring students, maybe 100 students every weekend or something, and it's just impossible. And so very early on, even before I came to Melbourne Uni, was that there was basically splitting students into small project groups, and they would go on self-guided field visits to different natural, pseudo-natural sites, nature reserves in around Melbourne. I'll show you that. And before that, they would have done some background research, so desktop research using geological maps, topographical maps, Google Earth survey of the area. And so when students went down to the sites, they would bring along a whole bunch of different things with them. They would need their maps. They would need to bring a handheld GPS to see where they were. They needed to navigate themselves to particular points of interest. There were instructions that you should be looking at this and that, say, for example, rock formation or part of a river, deposition or vegetation formation. Magnetic compass to discern which direction they're facing. So, for example, the aspect of a slope, for example, determines a lot of the vegetation distribution, soil depth, and so on. Inclinometer as well. So you get them to measure, slope angles. We get them to use finally use trigonometry to figure out Pythagoras' theorem to figure out the height of a tree. It's too tall for them to measure using a tape measure, and notebooks and pens and so on to note down their observations. So it's sort of distributed across, and they have to manage different tools and resources as they went along, and of course take photographs as well. So this is the range of different locations that we actually have students go to, ranging from the granitic formation of the Yuyangs out west, all right, to a volcanic landscape, ancient volcano out east in the Fern Tree Gully, the Dandenong Ranges National Park, on the lava plains up north around Kalada Tempuri, and wetlands kind of setting. And we also have some coastal locations, and as well as some much older Pleistocene age sand dune formation. So you have a sort of heathy landscape, dunes undulating that landscape as well. So really wide range of different landscapes that we wanted our students to be exposed to, but also examine in detail. Yep, so just a closer look at those locations. You can sort of see that there are sort of little patches of nature reserves. And we sort of come back to that with the students to think about how these, natural patches are actually surrounded by a sea of development. And so the connectivity and disconnectivity of these natural landscapes are something that we also get them to think about and analyze for their reports that they write up. All right, so a look at sort of the kind of things that we get students to look at. If you just sort of follow the mouse here, so like that's the starting point, the top car park, and then so that's at a high point. And what we wanted them to do is to sort of survey the landscape and look at how the river actually meanders, navigate their way down to the bank of the river, and understand how the river flows, how it might have eroded into the landscape and the associated soils and vegetation. Compare that with sort of a point bar sort of location where there would have been more deposition by the river, and then sort of a wetland, a sort of isolated area there that has been isolated by the river as the meander changed, and so some wetlands being located there as well. And of course, understanding that the urban environment is just sort of next door to it, so to speak. So really getting students to traverse the landscape, understand it from the broad scale, right, standing there, but also being able to zoom in and look at specific parts of the landscape and detailed understanding of the observation and understanding of those processes. Okay, so but what actually happens there is that students is essentially novices in being able to dissect, analyze, decompose the landscape, and try and figure out how the landscape, what are the natural processes that actually occur in the landscape. Okay, so for example, looking at this formation here, all right, what immediately pops out, all right, would be, of course, I can see bedding planes, the tilting of the bedding planes. I guess I can sort of link to, well, right, that's probably a type of sedimentary rock, right? A background knowledge on how this would have been formed. But and this sample straight away I can see is a vesicular basalt that is part of a lava plain, all right, deposited a couple million years ago. But the undergraduate student first year would find a lot of difficulty in trying to figure out. It's just a sort of a mass of different aspects that they don't know where to start. Okay, and of course here, identifying vegetation or ascertaining canopy cover percentage as well. All All right, so really being novices, students need that expert guidance and they need additional learning resources, and also and all that for them to draw upon and achieve a good level. We're not expecting them to be experts, but to move on from knowing next to nothing to knowing a substantial degree amount of natural processes knowledge, and also to be able to apply that. So just a picture of seafood there, supplied by students, quite scenic landscapes that they get to visit. So that's part of the enjoyment or engagement that they get from the activity as well. And so with mobile technology, we know that smartphones are ubiquitous. There's a lot of potential for transformative one-to-one learning. And what this led us to was to develop an app to assist to support students in the fieldwork called FieldFriend, to leverage upon the functionalities and try and transform fieldwork from a traditional mode. So here's the sort of use of FieldFriend in the broader context of the subject. So the subject, we at the very start of the subject, we try and assess the students' prior knowledge. We have a survey and group discussions. We start to put them into groups, working groups, project groups, and then we try and build that conceptual knowledge and practical skills as well. Before, and of course, along the way, telling them that, well, you're going to have to apply those knowledge and skills in an actual landscape. And therein here comes the actual activity of the site visit. And so what we want to do is to scaffold their learning experiences, have some kind of visual guide for landscape analysis, have prompts to guide them on what to look at or to consider or reflect on, and of course, a very primary thing of guiding them to the important locations. And then, coming back to the class, all right, they would do consolidate some of that knowledge discussions within the groups as well, to construct and present about their experiences, their findings, their data, and also some tutorial discussions. And then sort of the summative aspect is to consolidate, synthesize all that into a landscape function analysis report. We don't have end semester exams, but we have a big report that takes the place of the exams. Okay, so FieldFriend, the app, essentially these are the basic functions. Location aware, obviously, to help with navigation. We wanted to provide for multimodal resources to be made available to the students, but also for students to generate their content as well in multi-modes. An app that is networked and integrated, and an app that could also scaffold their learning and their investigations in the field. And so how we designed FieldFriend was and we picked up Harrington's design principles, and more or less aligned FieldFriend design and functions to align with these various design principles. So, we wanted real-world relevance. So we wanted in-field learning interactions, situated, authentic. That's sort of part of the field work experience itself, but also physically traversing space. So moving through the landscape is part of the experience. So not just being in various points. Students were made aware and availed of the app before their trip, so they could familiarize with it. And then we basically allowed it to be blended, so it could be used along other apps. And you could tag or make an observation whenever you want and wherever you wanted as well. So it accommodates some serendipity. So students were encouraged to say, to actually not just follow particular observation points, but to say, oh, look, I saw this really interesting rock formation, or this interesting patch of soil in the landscape. What could it be? And bring it back to class for discussion. We wanted also individual and collaborative interactions in the group. So the use of the app and the resources could engender conversations around the topic, but also that it would enable sort of a group-based, learning or cognition, how you want to call it. The affordances there as listed. It's personalized, obviously, on their own smartphones, and we wanted it to basically mediate that knowledge construction, all right, by scaffolding novice learners' interaction with the field environments, all right, but still working within the group, and then also representing elements of the field environment by producing or generating their own content. Here's the quick look at the processes. So we had multiple involvement in terms of the design and the requirements. Recall the two other subjects that were involved in the design of FieldFriend. And there's also a technical team from University of Melbourne, so the learning environments team as well, that was involved in developing the technical aspects to it. So we integrated academic knowledge across faculties, but also we had a good tech team behind it. Just a quick look at the web-based environment. So, so this is the instructor design environment, I guess. And the students can also look at it, but what we can do as instructors, if we have time, I can demonstrate it to you. But you can basically put waypoints in there, present students with video or photograph or text with questions, a range of different questions. And then, it will be downloaded by the students in the app, and off they go to explore the landscape. This is the app environment. So this is, I think, screenshots of the iOS one, the Apple one. And here they are. These dot area shows where they are, which direction they're facing, and where they are meant to go to. The tasks that are set to them. And they can also do their own observations as well. So they can take a video and it'll be stored within the app and then can be exported up to the database, the FieldFriend database. Okay, so this is an example of a picture that they took along Mary Creek. So essentially sort of between, it's a very interesting transition. Sorry, you got to go into a bit of geology here, hydrology, between the basalt plain over there and a quick, really disruptive transition into the sedimentary rocks over there that's cut through by the Mary Creek by erosion. This is the Android interface, looks slightly different, but the concept is similar. I just wanted to show the sort of the tasks that they get exposed to as well, so we can ask them to do different things, a video response, okay, and they also have choice in responding to a description task, all right, describe what's going on at this point, observing the creek's flow, how water level might go up really quickly in an urban, very urbanized environment, a flashy hydrograph, evidence of plastic bags. It's quite a polluted stretch of the creek, so you can actually see plastic bags stranded in the trees, in the shrubs during the storm rise of river flow, and then they can use different modes to respond as well. We don't have students use FieldFriend in isolation, so we get students to use the phone as a educational technological Swiss knife, so other apps that relate to it. So Leaf Snap app for field identification of plant species, and also soil maps as well. So what are we hoping for them to do is to sort of try and pull knowledge and information from different places and try and figure out what are the interactions or interrelationships between, say, position in the landscape, soil characteristics or soil type, and plant distribution or plant types as well. So back here, so after the trip, for example, then what we have is a view of students, their responses at the different points of the landscape, and also their uploads as well. as in manual individual observations. The important thing that came out from the design of this was that after looking at sort of external apps or web bases out there, we wanted it to be in a secure environment for data security reasons, and so we could also customize how we wanted to arrange and structure the information. So an evaluation, this was done back in 2016. We had a first trial, and so the rating wasn't impressive back then. We've got feedback, especially from 2018, 2019. We did the Android one in 2017, but that data hasn't been evaluated yet. So I'll talk a little bit more of that. Some positives, they basically were very well guided through the landscape. They didn't come back, students didn't come back to say, oh, well, I didn't know what I was doing in the field, didn't know where to go or what to look at. Site visit was a waste of time. I think most of them enjoyed it and felt supported in some way. No more paper maps, so they could focus on observing and discussing the landscape. I think generally students are quite used to navigating, and as we are these days, navigating using a phone, smartphone, and we saw that a lot of them use the media that were captured or screenshots in their group presentations and landscape reports as well. Have I faded out? Hello?
You're all good, Alexis. It's just your webcam is frozen.
Okay, yep. So you can still see the slide, but you might not see my mouse because oh, right, I'm back. Yeah. Hang on.
It's just dropped you out of screen sharing now.
Yeah. Back. It's a bit patchy internet at home. So you see that slides now?
Still loading.
Okay. It's coming towards me. Well, I'll just go on talking. So do you see it now?
No, it still just says
Struggling with computer.
Yeah,
Not yet. Yeah.
It's coming through still. Oh, there we go.
We
We're
can
back.
see it now.
We're back.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I guess areas for improvement down here, right? So I think students still needed more support and guidance on reading the landscape features. At least that came out from the student feedback, and to the tutors, and also through the formal feedback. And we've been working on that actually in terms of giving more support during the tutorials prior to them going out. But also I've sort of encountered work by Mock and Goodwin in terms of the importance of inscription and helping novice learners become more expert at discerning particular features or aspects of what they're observing. And I think I saw a presentation and also I read a bit of work by Goodwin in terms of, I think in the background of, in the context of archaeology, in which an expert archaeologist gestures and points out specific aspects of what they're looking at, features, and so starts guiding the novice in really understanding and be able to discern various features. And so how to integrate that into the media of the app that's being presented to them, and then also getting students to actually attempt to do that sort of inscription back. All right. We're also sort of trying to develop or change the web environment to be more conducive for students' reflection and collaboration. Right now, we have individual rows of students thinking of how to, I guess, provide a platform for them to come together and discuss it. But they still do it, I mean, on their own, within their own groups and using social media. And some aspects of the app are still a bit rough around the edges, so it's not sort of, I guess, as polished as like it as you tend to see, for commercial apps. So that's something that we need to work on as well. So next steps, improvement of app UI, web environment, and data exchange protocols. Some of these have already been improved, but a lot of it is dependent on funding, really. And the folks at learning environments, of course, supporting many other different projects as well. Oh gosh, I've disappeared off the screen again. Yeah.
Just keep talking.
Yeah. So
You're back.
So we've done it. We've done it unit wide, as in previously in 16 and 17, it was just on the Apple OS, and 18, 19 we had the Android available as well. So that's when we had full scale implementation. What the next steps would be, sort of more rigorous evaluation. So we've developed kind of like a very aligned survey questions following Harrington's design principles. To be honest, haven't had the time and space to look at those survey results, but I should. And also more insightful or rigorous qualitative methods. I mean, one thing that we could talk about would be that one big question methodologically is like, how do you try and capture and analyze, group cognition, knowledge building in situ while students are out in the field, while dealing with issues of privacy, sensitivity, putting programs or software on people's phones and that sort of thing. And we're hoping for wider collaboration, implementation, investigation, people to trial it, and of course, always be useful to have funds to further develop the app as well. So conclusion, just go down the list. I won't go through all of them. We really want to move away from the sort of a traditional Cook's tour excursion, people in the front, just talking to students who may or may not be interested. We want it to be learner-centered, active learning, discovery-based learning, but still guided, bringing students from novice to at least apprentice level. The app is customizable, to different locales. You can use it if you're in Canada or Europe or Japan or whatever. And sort of that continuum, situativity, I guess, getting students to learn and try and apprehend and trying to apply their knowledge, work through the uncertainty in the landscape, in a particular authentic landscape, but be able to then build those skills and knowledge and hopefully be able to generalize those skills and knowledge into different environments that they go to in the future. So I think FieldFriend has the potential to mediate that researcher practitioner role as well. I guess so from our research-based knowledge, how we actually bring the students into closer orbit of being a practitioner of our disciplines. It's quite COVID relevant in the sense of not being able to bring students out in large groups, and so there's been very recent interest from different parts of the uni. From Earth Sciences, they're trying to integrate that into this unit called the Making of Melbourne. Looks at various aspects, indigenous history, imprint on the landscape, along with geology and hydrology. Chancellery is looking at how they can use it for self-guided tours for new students. Biosciences is looking at how they could use FieldFriend for field botany, field learning experiences, and marine sciences, but they're sort of holding back marine science aspect because I think they're afraid there's a lot of risk assessment things involved, as well as, of course, dropping phones into the sea and all those sorts of things. So so I guess just some acknowledgements to my colleagues. and as well as the technical development team. You can't, I guess you might be experienced with that, but you can't develop a technical solution without having people who can actually do it well, and of course supported by funds from the university as well. So yeah, that's all I have for you today. Thanks for your time and attention.
Well, thank you, Alexis. It was really interesting. Huge potential, around your project. I like the fact that it's been longitudinal, that you've been, working on this and gathering data for 4 or 5 years. I'm also, really impressed that you've also based this on sound design principles using Harrington's mobile learning design principles. There's a few points we've put into the chat around perhaps some relevant literature that you might be interested in as well. And I think there's a couple of questions from our illustrious group of in the SIG here as well. But I like that term produce. I don't know if you've come across it before, but Axel Bruins actually used that term back in 2007, 2008. He's got a book out called From Production to Producers, which is about students actually becoming professional content creators rather than the traditional higher education, which is the receptors of delivery. And it's fantastic that your app is one way of doing that.
I think there's a lot of potential around that, because I think my son, he's 9 years old and 10 years old, sorry. And he's in a sense producing his own videos of what he's done on the iPad and putting it up. So I think young children and of course youth, young adults are quite used to that sort of production process.
Exactly. And I think the popularity of like Minecraft with that age group as well, where they're creating, and that's the thing that's incredibly motivating for them, is they're creating their own environments or modifying environments. Great.
So Mirasa, you had a question on, can students view each other's generate content? So the answer is yes, they can, and we actually have settings. So do we have time? I can actually show you if you don't mind, Thomas.
Yeah, no, we've got about just under 15 minutes.
Okay. Yeah.
Marissa, you're muted. I think Marissa's asking a question, but
yes, no, I was just saying that. Sorry, I was mentioning that. Well, you said students get into groups and do these projects together. So I was wondering how the app supports the collaboration aspect of the projects. If they use any third-party platforms to do the content sharing, or if that's an available feature within the app.
It is available within the app. One interesting thing that we got from students is that sometimes, I think something that sort of didn't occur to us, or didn't occur to me while we were trying to design this, was that students are quite competitive with one another. So in terms of grades, sometimes they don't want to share all their videos, all their pictures, or observations or reflections with their classmates, in fear of course, the classmates are going to take what they've done and put it into their own report and, get a higher mark than them. So then they're like, oh yeah, but we did build in the different levels. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So we have different settings or levels of sharing as well. So let me see. I'm just going to click into that. I hope it doesn't drop out again. So there's a privacy setting as well. So you can have only your own data is viewable. You can have site members' data viewable. Okay, so you can share it within the site. So there are various groups allocated to a site, and then also So you have different, let's say, Seaford Beach. I have then grouped under tutors, so tutors know how and where to go in to look at their students' work. And then within
this is all configurable per site visit, is it, Alexis?
Yes, that's right. You can configure it. So you what we also wanted was that there's an upload groups function, and so we could port. Well, you need to do a bit of organization. You port the student list out to a CSV into a import template. Assign groups and then sort of upload it into the Few Friends system. So it sort of semi speaks to the university records, and it's all within the university servers, I guess. And so there's less chance of data being leaked out.
Are there any do like a student e-portfolio system where students can, present and curate the content they've actually captured?
Yeah, I think that's a possible direction of development, or at least an ability to link or export those to then get into an e-portfolio system. Would be interesting.
The initial content actually saved on the student's own device.
Yes.
And then they'd be able to export that from the camera roll, etc., into a parallel e-portfolio, maybe WordPress or something.
Yeah, so I guess there'll be sort of technically they need some kind of common import-export format. Yeah, but on that point, storing all the observations on the phone was important for us, because there are actually some sites that are out of reach of good internet connections. And so we didn't want to be dependent on sort of a cloud-based supply resources. And so the app was designed to store whatever reflections, observations, responses that they make on the phone. And then when they get back to a good Wi-Fi, back to campus, essentially, they could then upload everything back to the server. Yeah, so it's almost like a double backup they've got.
Alexis, can the students collect, curate, and also present on the app? Like they present back to the class on the app, like, I don't know, through AirPlay or something like that? How does that work?
Well, they could, but I guess by AirPlaying their, as in on their phones or on the web interface.
Yeah, I was just thinking through the app, do they collect the information? Is that how it works? And they curate it actually on the app, like they modify it, and then how does it actually get shared, I guess, with the rest of the class, or with the with the teaching cohort?
So depending on the privacy settings, the resources and the responses can be shared. But I think how we used it for natural environments was that they would, it's a bit sort of pluck out the resources, the videos or the photos that they've got, and then put it into a traditional PowerPoint presentation, so to speak. But I think
and I was just wondering what the user experiences was like. Was it a big learning curve for the students, or did they just take to it like Facebook or Instagram? Or
they needed to. Sorry, I'm just trying to adjust where the screens are. They needed to get used to the idea, actually, because it's not designed the interface isn't what we want them to do with the app, and in the app isn't intuitive in the sense that the way they use social media. So they had to get used to the idea of sort of a task-driven navigation and exploration of the landscape. And so, in essence, much less communication between individuals, more of directed or structured observation of the environment. So, yes, they did need to sort of get a head around how they're supposed to use the app. But on the navigation-wise, they're pretty okay. Yeah.
why I'm asking was back in 2012 we did a sort of a very similar app, but it was a student developed app, co-developed with fieldwork students in town planning and also in the arid and alpine zone students with the computer science students, and it was it didn't get to the stage that yours is, basically because I left the university, went to Deakin, so it just sort of did what often projects do, and sort of fell off the agenda. But yeah, it's looks like a really interesting version.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, one thing that you've indicated is quite useful for consideration is actually getting students to be much more involved in the process, in the design and improvement process. Right now, you know, it's very instructor driven. Like, we get the feedback from the students on their complaints, or what they weren't able to do, and then try and feed that back into the developers. And so yeah, if we can user-based design, I guess, having students involved, integrated into the design process will be really, really good. Have to figure that out.
So I'm just wondering, Neil, do you think there would be some way that you could, use an app like this in language learning for your students, so they do a little bit of a tour and they have to discover stuff and, perhaps describe what they're discovering? Maybe
that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I was just wondering if there's a way. It seems like there's an enormous amount of work that a teacher has to do to input the maps and the sites, but is there a way for, perhaps using Google in some way, when you put in your destination where you're going to, and it gives you a route to get, that sort of side of things, so you can just import a route into the app, which is then populated with things to visit, and then students, as Tom suggested, could go around and do reviews of a site, or describe it for other people, or take photos, or all sorts of things. I think could be done, depending how sort of flexible the app is to accept other information. Yeah.
Oops. Thanks, Neil. I think that's what I've been asking for from the developers, to actually have an import function from Google Earth or Google Maps, or Google Earth. I think is much easier than Google Earth, to export a KMZ and then have few friend import it in, like what you do with most GIS software. Yeah, so they say that it's possible, but requires some development, and so some funds would be necessary to do that. But yeah, in terms of instructor workload and burden, I also saw that as a potential, a big sort of hurdle to overcome.
So Michael's got a question in the chat there for you as well.
Okay. Yeah. I keep dropping in and out. Where's that? I've dropped out, so I didn't see the question in the chat. So my chat is cleared now. Sorry. Could you drop it in again? That's good.
The short version is, I was thinking, as you were talking about the observations and the feedback, I was thinking maybe you have a situation where you provide the feedback, the teachers provide the feedback, and then the students go back out, and then we action, they get that feedback sort of interactively as they're back out on tour, and then they action that feedback. Have you thought about maybe doing that? It's kind of a Piagetian sort of...
It's like a learning loop.
Yeah, learning loop type thing.
Oh, so do you mean live feedback?
Well, actually, as you've been sitting there, I've been thinking, could we do this live? And I kind of decided it would be too hard to do it live. So I thought maybe you could do it asynchronously. They make the observations, the teacher provides feedback on their observations, and then they go back out and get that feedback as they're back on tour, doing the same tour again.
Yep. Yeah. Definitely. I think that's a really good idea, in the sense that they go back out with changed well, after the feedback, and being able to look at the landscape again and say, all right, I'll see that now. I didn't see that before because my tutor or lecturer has pointed that out to me. Definitely. A minority of the students wants to go back out again, but most of them don't necessarily want to, just because it takes a day out of their schedule and all that. I mean, yeah, I would love to have them go out again and take another look. In terms of live, yeah, I've been sort of, playing around using the idea as well. I think it's really cool to if we're able to do it live, and you have students sort of not just sort of tutors, online and seeing what the students see, but also maybe even it's a bit of a dream, it's probably too complicated, but students out in the field but in different locations or different sites saying that, oh, look, I've got this. Look at this here, and the landscape is quite different. A granitic landscape inland is quite different from a dune landscape, by the coast. So, but live is cool, but maybe there's some way we can facilitate sort of asynchronously that sort of comparison.
I'm just wondering whether augmented reality would be one way to do that. So it almost becomes a bit like a Pokemon Go type of approach. So there's a question there from Tom Worthington. We probably needs to be our last question, and then we'll have to kind of wrap up.
Oh yeah. Tom, depending on you and the Navy folks, military folks, to send out, sentinels and all that to do all that work for them.
Drones, yeah.
Perhaps making it a little more serious, is there use of such devices in your area?
Oh yeah, well, incidentally, I had quite an enterprising group a couple of years back. They brought a drone. They went over to Arthur's Seat down Mornington Peninsula, and they took a drone out and flew it around. So they had the whole sort of, hey, this is our group here, and they flew it close to the King's Falls as well. Had a look at they gave us a view of the vegetation from above the canopy, so that was quite cool. And so you really have to give it to the students, for enthusiastic students and creative ones. They really come up with quite cool stuff.
Yeah, that would be a great way to enhance that site visit, wouldn't it? To have a drone footage of that you can't physically get to. You're at the bottom of a cliff or something, or it's too dangerous to climb up, but you can fly a drone up there and capture your own content. That would be quite fun.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Alexis. I mean, it's a great project, and there's huge potential, I think, to extend it, but also lots of potential there for you to be writing up what you've already done and evaluating it. So to just encourage you to do that. And thank you to our SIG members who have been here today, and it's been great to give you a bit of feedback, but also great to learn from what you've done. So thank you very much.
Yeah, very nice to meet everyone. Hope we can catch up again in the near future.